So here we have a little setup going on where we have these sound waves that are about to hit, let's do sound waves, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a sound wave, but we have sound waves that are represented by these wavefronts, right? And in the last video, we talked about how wavefronts, really represent some phase of the wave, right? So maybe each wavefront can represent the crest, right? And that would make the wavelength just be the distance in between. We have these wavefronts coming in basically parallel to like this like little divider thing, right? We got like walls. We got some walls like so, and we could say they're soundproofing or whatever. Doesn't really matter. We have these walls, but there's still a little opening in between the walls, and these sound waves, obviously they're gonna pass through the opening, and the question becomes: will this person standing right here, who I drew kind of small, will this person be able to hear the sound waves as they pass through the opening? And your gut instinct is probably no, he won't be able to hear it, right? Because these sound waves, or I guess the sound waves over here are getting obstructed by this wall. These sound waves are getting obstructed by this wall. So what remains is just the only sound waves that can pass through the opening. And this marker is really dead, so I'm gonna really quickly get a blue marker. But yeah, the only sound waves will be the ones that pass through, like so, right through the opening. So this person will never hear these sound waves. But what ends up happening in reality, right? This is what you'd expect to happen. What ends up happening in reality is you get sound waves like this. Right? You get sound waves that sort of like spread out, right? And this person will definitely be able to hear these sound waves. And this is a really interesting phenomenon known as diffraction, right? So diffraction, people sometimes call it like the bending of waves, right? When they hit obstacles. This is like an obstacle on an object, right? Because it's like there's walls. It's causing an obstacle for the sound waves, but the sound waves, once passing through the obstacle, they don't just go straight down. They now start to spread, and that's a really interesting phenomenon. But it actually makes a ton of sense when you think about Huygens principle. So, as a quick reminder for Huygens principle, I made a video on it. My last video is on Huygens principle. The key gist of Huygens principle is that on a wave, oh my god, I'm so sorry. On a wavefront, each point, like on that wavefront, can be treated as a source for secondary waves. So if you think about points along this very top, wavefront, right? They each can be treated as like sources of their own, sources of like these secondary waves. And the next wavefront is just formed by the interference, and I need to understand that a bit better. People say interference sometimes, like the constructive interference. But the key just is that the next wavefront is created by connecting kind of the points along all of these circles, and the next wavefront is like the line tangent to all of those points. So you can see, you can make it applies for all of these wavefronts, right? There's all of these points are creating their own secondary waves, or wavelets sometimes people call them. But let's think about what happens at this point right here. So at this wave, right? Well, if we think about, like, these wavelets right here, they kind of get constrained, right? Like these these wavelets aren't really able to grow to the same extent as like this opening. And this opening here creates the wavefront passing through the opening of this slit. And I'm not drawing these circularly, so my apologies. But what ends up happening is this wavefront right here, Huygens principle still applies. So even though there's no wave here and there's no wave here, what happens is that the points on the end, right, they form, right, those secondary waves, right? They form secondary waves like even more like so. And the wave points here, they still form wavelets. So what you end up getting is you do end up getting like a straight kind of wavefront here. This is making me kind of angry how I need to get new markers so bad. But you get a straight wavefront here. And because of these endpoints, they still form wavelets that are circular in nature. At these endpoints, you get curves. And I kind of drew my initial, like these wavefronts, I kind of drew wrong. But you could see that now there's like this curving at the end, right? Because these endpoints, they're forming wavefronts that go circular in nature. And now, if you think about these wavefronts, right, they form their own like waves, right, that are circular in nature. And then when you draw out each wavefront, you get more and more curves. And I hate dead markers so much. It's like a pet peeve. But you get, as faint as it may seem, you get curves coming out and wavefronts spreading in all directions. And it's all because of Huygens principle, right? Each point is the source of a secondary wavelet that propagates in all directions. And excuse me, wavefronts are just the result of connecting all of those wavelets together by the tangents to create wavefronts, and you get like this curving effect as a result. So that's a very brief explanation as to why diffraction occurs, and it occurs with all sorts of obstacles, right? If you have a wavefront, right, that is instead of hitting or not hitting, but if I have this wavefront, right, let's say there's an obstacle like here. So then you get, right, there's going to be wavefronts here, but what ends up happening is now these points, right, they form wavelets like so, and you get these curves like so. So now the waves have kind of almost bent around this obstacle, right, because of these endpoints creating circular wavelets that, you know, when connected, it curves around, and then those points, right, create wavelets, and the whole wave has bent around the obstacle. And you can imagine there's going to be interference patterns here, right? So excuse me, this is essentially why diffraction occurs. It's just a Huygens principle thing. Diffraction is just a consequence of Huygens principle. And if Huygens principle weren't true, and if waves really did just act as like lines, then yeah, we would get just waves coming in like that, and our guide wouldn't be able to hear this sound. Or, you know, if Huygens principle didn't apply, a person standing here would never hear the sound, right? I mean, just think about all the times in your real life that your parents have called you out for something, and you know, your parents called you out for dinner to do your homework, you hear that sound, even if they're not aligned with you. And you might think it's because, oh, the sound's bouncing off, but you know, the sound can't always bounce off and hit your ears all the time. Although there's probably some sound bouncing, a lot of it is because of diffraction and how sound waves interact with obstacles and bend around them to hear you. So diffraction is a really cool, like an everyday thing that you don't even realize happens, but it's there. And this is kind of the physics behind why diffraction occurs. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this made at least some sort of sense. It's not a trivial concept. It's not intuitive, but this is why it happens.